Show.
Raise a signal flag on a bare hilltop. Call up an army against Babylon. Raise a signal flag on a bare hilltop. Call up an army against Babylon. Wave your hand to encourage them. Wave your hand to encourage them. As they march into the palaces of the high and mighty. I, the Lord, have dedicated these soldiers for this task. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express my anger. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express my anger. And they will rejoice when I am exalted.
Hello, good afternoon. Katherine Albrecht here. I have been, I put in about 20 hours editing video, and something super cool. I learned how to edit video, and I'll tell you, I was saying yesterday on the show, my hat is off to the people who create the Hollywood videos or the Hollywood movies, because you do, 6 months of shooting, and then they can spend a year or two just editing the video. I mean, it is nuts. There is sound, there is things I didn't even touch, lighting and all kinds of complexitude. It's not really a word, but that's how it felt. It was complicated. But now I have newfound skills, and I'm going to use my newfound skills to begin creating YouTube shorts and to shorten these radio broadcasts down to where you don't have that 1 minute long intro, etc. at the beginning. All right, couple of follow-ups I want to share with you from yesterday's program. The first one is I actually have the book. If you're looking on YouTube, you can see it is A Change of Heart by Claire Sylvia. She has a co-author, William Novak. And this was published, let me give you the date on this particular book. Absolutely fascinating book. 1997. She tells the story of getting a heart transplant and in her 50s, and getting the heart of a young man in his, I think he was like 19 years old, and how dramatically her life changed when she had this other guy's heart in her body. She began walking like a man. In fact, she had always been a heterosexual woman, and she was single, divorced, widowed. I don't know what her deal was, but she didn't have a partner. And after the heart transplant, when she got the heart of a man, she began attracting gay women. She began attracting a different kind of romantic partner, because the heart knows what it wants, and it is the heart that appeals to the heart. So I'm just going to go over just a little bit of this because I haven't talked about it in a while, and if you haven't heard it, you need to. If you have signed up to be an organ donor, tear up your organ donor card. You may need to contact your DMV and undo it. And if you're thinking, what in the world? It's the give the gift of life. What are you talking about, Katherine? Hopefully by the end of this little discussion, I will have changed your mind. So the first thing to know is, as a donor of a heart, or really anything that is taken after your quote-unquote death, that they cannot use an organ from a dead person. As you are probably aware, if the brain goes without oxygen, if the heart or any of the organs go without oxygen for a period of even just 5 minutes, they can become absolutely unusable. So it is a misnomer, it is a deception, it is, let me actually come out and say it, a lie, that it is after death that they take organs for transplantation. They can only transplant organs from a living, breathing human being, because it has to be, those organs have to be in the body, being oxygenated by a beating heart, by a flowing circulatory system, by breathing lungs, or some kind of artificial way of getting oxygen into the lungs and into the bloodstream. But they do not take organs from dead people. That is not true. They can take corneas, and they can take skin. They can take certain body parts for research purposes, but as far as transplanting into another person, if we're talking organs, we're talking about a person who is alive. And this has created a very disturbing situation in emergency rooms where they don't want the organs of a person who's died of an advanced disease, for example, because those organs won't be very usable. They don't want the organs of a person who's died of old age because those will be old organs. The organs that they want are the organs of young, healthy accident victims. That is the top number one source for getting organs to transplant into people who are terminally ill and would die without the organ. So the problem that occurs in a hospital is you have divided interests in the hospital. There is a transplantation team that I think are just a bunch of ghouls who are there waiting for someone to come into the emergency room alive and be able to convince the family that they will not recover. And here we are, we're standing by, and we're going to rush your loved one with his or her beating heart off to an operating room, and we're going to remove their organs from the living body. Now, I've talked about this before. I'm going to just summarize very briefly the horrors of having an organ taken from you while you are alive. We've had a number of people who've come back from the supposed brain dead state, from supposed comas, and they can report with extreme accuracy exactly what the conversation was that was held around them when the discussion of organ transplantation or donation came up, because they were conscious. They just couldn't move. They just could not respond. And can you imagine the horror of having been an accident victim, maybe fell off the roof, trying to put up Christmas lights. I've heard recently a couple of people that happened to. Maybe you were in a car accident. Maybe, who knows what happened, but something happened. You're in the hospital and your loved ones are around. Of course, they're, red-eyed with crying and fear and worry for you. And then the ghouls come in the room, the doctors come in the room and say, I'm so sorry to report that your loved one has passed. They're dead. There's no hope of recovery. But, cry. All right. But we can redeem this moment of extreme sorrow by giving the gift of life to someone else. Your loved one would have wanted to do that. And so they take you at your most vulnerable, your absolute lowest moment of just abject mortification when someone you love has died. And they tell you that there is a way to alleviate the extreme amount of grief and suffering that you're feeling right then. And that is to, quote, give the gift of life and allow them to operate on your living son, daughter, mother, father, husband, wife, brother, sister, whoever it might be. So at that moment, what they do, if they're able to get a consent form signed by the family, is they, or if you have an organ donor card, that's even better. They can just go directly to that and not even pass go. They then take the person living, they put them on life support. They make sure they're on life support. So they make sure they've got an IV and they're breathing, and they start their heart again if it stops. They do all the things they would do to resuscitate a person who is dying and keep them alive. But then they take them into an operating theater, they call it, operating room. And at that point, they then cut, literally with a bone saw, they cut into the rib cage and remove the beating heart, kind of like the Aztecs did up on their pyramids, when they would, the industrial factory level of human sacrifice, when they removed beating hearts from victims' chests. It's very much the same. They remove the beating heart from a living person. Now, they have learned, this is pretty awful, they have learned to sedate the person, because frequently when they begin cutting and breaking bones, the person wakes up and starts screaming. Right? Not surprising. If you are conscious, that would be probably enough to kick you into gear to enable you to actually scream out and speak. And so in order to stop that struggle, the physical struggle, the screaming, which of course makes everyone in the room absolutely freak out. The nurses all freak out. The, orderlies, everybody around is completely in horror that you are cutting into a living body. So now what they do is they give you a paralytic So as you're lying there alive but injured, they put a paralytic into the body so that you cannot respond, so that you can't scream, you can't move a muscle, and you have to lay there, or lie there, I guess that's the word. You have to lie there while this happens. And the point at which you actually die is the point at which they remove the beating heart. And then the body doesn't get any oxygen, and they don't really care. They remove any other organs they want before removing the heart, while they're still oxygenated, and then finally they remove the heart, and then they just pretty much throw you away. You're at that point just an empty shell. And your body actually then does die. You then don't have any blood circulation, any oxygen to your brain, etc. So it's a ghoulish, horrific, nightmarish prospect for the donors. I'm going to put that word in quotes. The victims who are operated on to steal their organs. Now let me talk when we come back about what happens to the people who get those organs, and it's just as bad. All right, I'm Katherine Albrecht. Stay tuned.
Why are most email programs free? Companies use them as bait to lure people into their system so they can scan their data and sell them to advertisers. It's like a hotel giving out free rooms so they can film people sleeping and then sell the video. You'd never agree to that. StartMail restores your privacy. No one but you sees your sensitive data, and it costs less than a postage stamp a week. StartMail.com. It's email you can trust. Your email is your business, but if it's spied on, hacked, or intercepted, it can fall into the wrong hands. The solution is encryption, a high-tech way to scramble your data so no one can read it. For years, only the technical elite could use this powerful tool until StartMail came along. StartMail not only lets you encrypt the email you send, it encrypts your entire account. Encryption. It's just one more way StartMail.com keeps you safe.
Hi, this is Joe Jaquin.
Anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. Oh, His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need. Thank Him for all He's done. Thank Him for all He's done. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine.
All right, I'm back.
People who walk
So
in darkness.
there's a study here I'm going to share with you. Let me see if I can click it up. Hang on. Is it going to be this one? Yes, it is. There we go. Okay, so if you're on YouTube and seeing the live stream there, you will see I'm going to put up a couple of different images here. This one is from Reddit, my my favorite place to get all kinds of tidbits of information. When excluding changes in physical attributes, 89.3%, so 90% of all transplant recipients reported experiencing a personality change after receiving their organ transplant. By the way, one of the common things that happens to people after they get someone else's heart is frequently, here's the awful part. So that heart is either going to have come, because it's going to come from a young person, and young people don't typically die unless it is one of two reasons. Either an accident, a tragic, horrible accident, in which case the heart is going to remember the horror that it experienced right before the accident took place, or even worse yet, suicide. Failed suicide attempts that did not result in the physical death of the person, but resulted in supposedly the brain death of the person. And so when a suicide victim, typically younger, is rushed to the hospital, the ghouls are there and say, sorry, there's nothing we can do. Your loved one's gone, but we can do this wonderful thing. We can give the gift of life to someone else. Well, think about this for a minute. The Bible tells us, guard your heart above all else, for from it arise the issues of life. The Bible also tells us that the heart is desperately wicked. The Bible talks about taking away the heart of stone and replacing it with a heart of flesh through the Holy Spirit. So left to our own devices without God, just as I was talking about yesterday, the actors and actresses and families that raise their children without God, it's a pretty bleak place. And if you think about Farrah Fawcett's heart or Ryan O'Neal's heart, if you heard my show yesterday, talking about their son Redmond O'Neal and Ryan O'Neal's daughter Tatum O'Neal, who he literally punched her when she was 9 years old because she got an Oscar for the movie they were both in rather than him. So they were giving her drugs at 6 years old. He was dying at 82 years old a couple years back, and he offered her drugs on his deathbed, offered her some pills and illegal drugs. So yuck, right? That the heart that was in Ryan O'Neal, the heart that was in Farrah Fawcett, is not a heart that I would want to put in my chest. I don't know about you, but I don't think so. I would rather have nature take its course, and for me to slough off this earthly coil and go off to be, have my spirit go off to be with the Lord for eternal life, which is my destiny. I would far prefer that than to live in this world with a dark, horrible heart inside of my chest. So if you think about it, the people whose hearts get put into other people are people who were miserable enough. Their hearts were in such despair that they literally wanted to end their own lives. And so one of the common side effects, if you want to call it a side effect, I would call it a main effect of receiving someone else's heart in a heart transplant. They never tell you, is it a man, is it a woman, were they old, were they young, were they black, were they white, they don't tell you any of that. They just give you a heart and you're supposed to be grateful for it. But you don't know how that heart ceased to function in its original owner's body. You don't know that. What you do know is that when you get that heart in you, you're frequently, or people who receive heart transplants are frequently racked with despair. I mean, and I'm talking about the darkest of depression and just despair. I don't even have a word for it. The reason that they experience that level of despair, according to the medical literature, is because they just underwent a major procedure. Okay. If you think about that for a minute, you are taking your heart, which has been with you since before you were born, the heart in which reside the issues of your life. You're supposed to guard your heart above all else, for from it arise the issues of life. Well, what do they do in the case of Clara Sylvia here? What they did was they put her in an emergency room, or her into an operating theater, and they sliced her open, but she was sedated, so she wasn't just paralyzed and conscious like these donors are. She was sedated, and her heart was removed from her body and thrown in the garbage. That's what happened to her heart. And then she was given the heart of someone else. Who is it who lives and who dies there? Let's think about this for a minute. So the donor, if the issues of life arise from the heart, which the ancients have all understood, it's only been in the last 100 years or so that we lost sight of the fact that the heart, you get heartbroken, your heart feels things. We feel in our hearts, we don't feel in our heads. We think in our heads, but we feel in our hearts. And it's only been in the last 100 years that we just thought of the heart as, kind of a disposable pump that doesn't really matter, a piece of equipment. But the heart of the young man the 19-year-old whose heart was put into Claire Sylvia's body, that heart got to live on, and Claire Sylvia's heart died. So who lived and who died there? I would argue that rather than Claire Sylvia being the one who continues living, that's who we think's living, because that's who we look at. We look at her and we see, her. Right? We see her body, her hair, her face, her hands, her gestures, her voice. And yet the heart beating in her chest is not her own. So her identity from which arise the issues of life has been discarded. And what has actually happened is that the heart of that young man now lives on in a new body. All right, that's a kind of a confusing way to think about it. But rather than Claire Sylvia living with someone else's dead, some dead person's heart in her, that heart was able to continue living after a tragic accident afflicted the body of that heart. And then that heart got a whole new body to live in. Horrifying. So let me read you this article here. This is where'd this come from? I'm getting it off of Reddit, but it is published. It's talking about Claire Sylvia. I'll just read this here. Following surgery, Claire Sylvia developed a new taste for green peppers and chicken nuggets, food she previously disliked. As soon as she was released from the hospital, she promptly headed to a Kentucky Fried Chicken to order chicken nuggets. She later met her doctor's family and inquired about the donor's affinity for green peppers. Their response was, "Are you kidding? He loved them, but what he really loved was, drumroll, chicken nuggets." Sylvia later discovered that at the time of her donor's death in a motorcycle accident, a container of chicken nuggets was found under his jacket. So who wanted those chicken nuggets? That heart. That heart was like, bummer, I have been in a hospital for a couple days, but now I'm back at it, and I am able to motivate a body to obtain the chicken nuggets and put them in here. Because I want them, because I'm in charge here. I'm the heart. Now, I talked yesterday about the fact that Claire Sylvia was mortified because here she is, a woman in her 50s. She's been very seriously, grievously ill for many years. She gets the heart of a 19-year-old, and all of a sudden, this heart is telling her what they, quote unquote, it's because there's two of them in there now, what they're going to do. And what they're going to do is eat chicken nuggets, go to KFC, and swagger around like a guy and make eyes at women, attractive girls. Go ooh la la, and she's not a gay woman, but that heart is the heart of a guy. And what is the heart of a guy like? Women. So she's walking around, kind of eyeing the women around her and going, "This is weird. Why am I feeling like this? I don't know." And she then goes on this wild cross-country trek, and she's exhausted. She's like, "Can we just stop this?" The heart's like, nope, we're going to go. And Claire Sylvia is just along for the ride. So her body is just being dragged along from pillar to post by this heart that has found a way to live on. Meanwhile, her own heart, her own self, has been discarded and incinerated and is gone by now because it got removed and thrown away. So that's what's wrong with this whole transplantation thing. It's sick and it's twisted. All right, let me go up and read you. All right. Oh, yeah, you don't even see my face. I'm sorry. When excluding changes in physical attributes, 90% essentially of all transplant recipients experience a personality change. Let's talk about what they are. So people with a heart transplant, if you can see this, this image here on the screen, physical attributes. So 95% of people report that with a heart transplant, their physical attributes change. Now, other organs, so this would be, liver, lungs, kidneys, those sorts of things, then only 55% experience physical changes as well from those. And I have lots of things to say about other organs too. It's, our organs are not just machines that pump blood and pump things and do stuff, but they're actually part of us and contribute to our personality. Emotions, 55% of people receiving a heart transplant experienced a change in emotion. Looks like about 58% of people with other organs experience changes in emotions. Food preferences, it's close to 50% of people getting heart transplants suddenly now like different food. I think the food that we like, what this indicates to me, is that our food preferences come from our hearts. So if you want to be on a diet, you don't want to change your mind, you don't want to change your body, you need to change your heart, because it is your heart that immediately wants those chicken nuggets, man. That as soon as you get out of the hospital, you're just heading down to KFC to eat the grease. So if you find yourself craving food that is not food you really want to eat, it's your heart you need to have a heart-to-heart talk with. There we go. Physical activities, personal identity. I'm just reading down the list. Now, these are becoming less and less. Personal identity It is about 18% of people who get a heart transplant experience severe differences in their personal identity. They don't even feel like themselves anymore. Movies and television, taste, basically, the taste in the kinds of content you want to consume, because it is your heart that chooses horror movies, or it is your heart that chooses a rated G fare, or it is your heart that chooses to listen to Project of Love versus Ozzy Osbourne and Highway to Hell. It's your heart making these decisions. And if you get someone else's heart, they're going to be making those choices for you. Now, how did I first learn about this? Coming up on a break in a minute. I first learned about this because I was reading about the suicide victim, or suicide, I don't know what you call it, perpetrator, victim, both, right? It was a guy who went into a shed in the back of his house and blew his head off with a shotgun. He was rushed to the hospital. They were able to salvage his heart. They put it into another man. And I'll tell you what happened to that other man when we come back. All right, stay tuned. Here I am. I'm here. All right.
Is your email box overrun with spam? With a StartMail account, you'll never have to give your real email address to a stranger again. Online shopping, newsletter subscriptions, getting that 30% off coupon, they all need your email address. But with StartMail, you can invent new addresses or aliases linked to your inbox behind the scenes and give those out to people while keeping your real address hidden. It's just one more protection from StartMail.com.
Red alert, Yahoo users. You've fallen in a trap that could ruin your life if you keep using Yahoo.
You consent to sharing all data in your email account with our AI providers, and you grant us a perpetual license to use, display, publish, and publicly distribute your content in any media known now or in the future, and to let other users access and distribute it as well.
Yikes. It's time to switch to StartMail, the only email that's AI-free and private by design. StartMail.com. Use promo code JD.
Hi, this is Ron Tafoya, owner and operator of New Method Cleaners, Northern Colorado's oldest dry cleaners. Men's clothing to women's fashions, we clean it all. Give us the call with all your cleaning questions. If we don't clean it, we might have a solution. We have 2 locations to serve you, in Severance and Fort Collins. Please call us at 970-775-0623, 970-775-0623.
Orem Crypto Investing. How would you like to make 18% monthly return on your investment? With Orem Crypto Investing, this is a reality. I'm not talking APR, annual percentage rate. I'm talking MPR, monthly percentage rate. Call us at 720-745-9798.
Hello everybody, this is Kyle, the owner of Bulldog Patriot Property Care. If you're looking for reliable, professional landscaping you can count on, Bulldog Patriot Property Care is now accepting new residential and commercial customers right here in the Greeley and Johnstown area. From weekly lawn maintenance and seasonal cleanups to aeration, overseeding, and property care, you'll get dependable support.
Sorry about that.
So after you have suffered a little, the mountains may move and the hills disappear. Even then, my faithful love, you will remain. covenant of blessing will never be broken.
Thank goodness for that. Katherine Albrecht here. All right, I want to wrap up this discussion of hearts, and I want to wrap it up with, let me see if I can find it here. So here is, I'm going to take over to the window there. This is pubmed.gov, and I'm always telling you to head over there if you haven't heard my shows when I talk about it. This is where you can find peer-reviewed, published academic research. This is what appears in all of the academic journals, pubmed.gov, and of course it's a play on the Club Med of the 1980s, way back when, for those of us old enough to remember that. But it is pub as in public medicine, and this is the National Library of Medicine from the National Institutes of Health, NIH, right there. So this is PubMed, and on PubMed there is an article, and I've got it up here on YouTube, and I'll tell you what it says. This is in a journal called Medical Hypotheses in February 2020. I see up here. Personality changes following heart transplantation, the role of cellular memory. Now, this is the secular, the humanist, the materialist explanation. This is the explanation that says there's got to be some way to explain it. I mean, we can't deny it any longer. We're seeing enough of this personality changes and different tastes and different memories even. People whose hearts were, I'll get back to the guy in a minute, but people who were the victims of murder, for example, and didn't quite totally die from that, but wound up having their hearts removed. In the person who receives the heart, they have a vivid memory of exactly who it was who killed who killed them, the heart, whatever. And crimes have even been solved through this. So there's got to be some explanation, say the materialists, the scientists who say, I'm not going to believe in spirit. There's certainly nothing else going on here. It must just be cellular memory. So there's been attempts to explain this because they got to explain it somehow. And that is currently the going explanation. But let me get back. Let me tell you about the guy who I first heard this about, and many of you have heard this story before, but it bears repeating. There was a man in England, and he committed suicide in a shed behind his home. He was rushed to the hospital, and they could not save him, and his family gave permission for them to remove his heart, which they then removed and put into another man of approximately the same age. That other man, after getting the heart, did what so many people do when they get a heart transplant, and they long to go and thank the family of the original donor. The reason they're doing that, what does the heart want? The heart wants to get back to its people. The heart wants to get back to its husband or wife or its family, its parents. The heart wants to return home again. The heart does not want to be removed and all of a sudden be living somebody else's life in some other house, eating other food and listening to other music. That's not what the heart wants. The heart wants to get home again to its people. And so there is this very common phenomenon of people who receive heart transplants that they just can't wait to get back to the family that the dead person, supposedly the dead person, that family. Now, it's really a living heart who's just occupying someone else's body, wants to get back home, and is going to use the body and the brain to figure out how to get back there. And this is one of the reasons why in transplantation, heart transplants particularly, they're very cagey, meaning reluctant to give out the identity of the donor's family or of the donor. Because why? Because when they do, that person walking around with that other heart is doing everything in its power to get back to that family. They don't just go, thank you for telling me, that's really nice. No, they're like, okay, what's the address? All right, how do I get there? So in this particular case, the guy who received the heart that had of the husband went to thank the wife, as they always do, went to thank the wife and say, I just had to meet you and say thank you for the gift of life from your husband. And lo and behold, they fell in love. What do you know? Why would they fall in love? Because the heart inside of him was already married to that woman. Right? The woman, on looking at the guy, he maybe had a different face, but it was the same heart. It was the same guy. And so she married him, right? So she marries the recipient of the heart. And not long after, he goes out into the shed with the same flippin' shotgun and kills himself again. So that story left such an impression on me. I said, huh. Wow, what is happening here? And that's how I fell down this rabbit hole years ago. And I have been a very outspoken opponent, in recent years, the medical community has caught up with me. I've been speaking out against this for a long time, and as have other people, but we've just been kind of voices crying in the wilderness. But recently, there were some reports coming out that doctors have now begun expressing their alarm at the fact that they have to sedate these people. They're screaming, the just all of the horrors that go on in the hospital, and the fact that there's a much lower likelihood of trying to save the life of a person who has a donor card than a person who doesn't. And just to end that out, let me tell you about what happens in China, which does not exactly have a good human rights record. In China, let's say you commit a crime, or the communist government accuses you of committing a crime, maybe being Falun Gong, having a different religion than the mainstream. The punishment in China is not death. The punishment is you are put into a facility where you live. You are imprisoned. You can't leave. They feed you pretty well. They take pretty good care of you. They take you to the doctor. They keep you physically healthy. And they carefully notate your blood type and your genetic details so that as soon as a wealthy Chinese person needs a heart that just happens to match yours, that's your death sentence. So they take you, if you are a Chinese prisoner, and they put you on a stretcher and they wheel you into an emergency room. Why? Because they're going to kill you. And the way they kill you is you're alive. They bring the wealthy person into the room next to you and sedate them. They just paralyze you. They cut open both of your chests. They remove your beating heart, thus killing you. Take your heart and put it into them. So I suppose in kind of a twisted way, your heart gets to live on in the body of some wealthy Chinese person, but yuck, who wants to live on like that? It's disgusting. So that's very common in China, actually. In fact, they don't really have an organ shortage in China because they just take the organs of political prisoners and other people in jail. And think about that. Is that a heart you want to get? Well, if it's a Falun Gong heart or maybe a political dissident, who knows? But if it's the heart of an actual criminal, like, I don't know, a serial murderer or someone who has engaged in that pig butchering scam where they're scamming people, who knows? Who knows what kind of awful crimes? But do you really want a criminal's heart in your body? No, you don't. You don't want a accident victim, a suicide victim, a criminal. You don't want any of these hearts in your body. Now, let me bring this now full circle to all right, let me find this. Okay, got my windows open and I'm going to show you one of them. All right, here we go. Let me take you over to this window. All right, memories of the heart, personality changes after cardiac transplants. This is dated 2025. You can find so many stories on this. If you find this interesting, it is riveting. It's just amazing. Like there's I'll just tell you one more. It was a kid who received, had some kind of tragic thing happen, and long story short, his heart was removed and put into another kid of about the same age. And as always happens in these cases, that kid was like, I want to go meet the family of the original heart that got put in me and say thank you, right? So they met at a church, and the kid, this is the trippy part, the kid who had the dead kid's heart in their chest went running across, never met the family before, never met anything, never been in this church, went running across the church, jumped into the arms of the parents of the dead kid and said, Mommy, Daddy, I'm back. Okay, that is creepy. That is creepy. This was a kid who had never met them before in their lives, but the heart knew them. The heart knew them. So that's what's happening. That's not cellular memory, folks. That's not cellular memory. So if you are a donor, tear up your organ donor card. And if you're living outside the U.S., you may have to actively make a point of removing yourself because other countries are automatically opt-in to donation. The U.S. is automatically opt-out unless you agree to it or your family agrees to it. In other countries, it's the other way around. Unless you have taken specific steps to opt out of the system, you are automatically an organ donor. It's disgusting. Okay, so now, we get back to my Firefox window here, and I just want to read the first paragraph of this article. Organ transplants are arguably one of the most important human achievements in the field of medicine. The first ever successful heart transplant from a human donor to a human Acceptor, took place on December 3rd, 1967. And that guy, Christian Barnard, is one of the most evil people you can ever read about. This guy was a complete scum. And he became world famous. He dumped his wife. He was dating like 16-year-olds. It was just like in his 60s, 70s. I don't know. This guy was gross. And loved the attention and the accolades. He was South African. He loved all the attention he got for being a pioneer. And there are so many stories of the unethical way in which he sourced the hearts that he used. It is gross. And so listening to the stories about that guy, you can see this was not in any way inspired by God. This was just evil stuff. So this article, 1967, the patient survived for 18 days. And yeah, it's one of the most amazing developments. When we come back, I want to talk about, well, what are people thinking about all these developments? All right, be right back.
I've been hearing a lot about
Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. Casting all your care upon him, casting all your worries upon him, for he cares for you. He cares for you. He cares. He cares for you. Stay alert, watch out for your great enemy. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone. Flowing like a gentle river, righteousness rolling over you like waves in the sea. Peace flowing like a gentle river, righteousness.
All right, I got to jump in, or I could just listen to that. I'll just hang out. What's my favorite song? I love that song. Love it, love it, love it. All right. I want to give you an update on something I talked about yesterday. I had a Bible quote. Usually I'm pretty good at knowing the Bible quote, because usually the reason I know all these Bible quotes is because the music you just listened to was Project of Love, Xander Stokes, who is just an extraordinary musician, and the Lord told him to take what you're reading and set it to music. He was a, heroin addicted, tattooed, heavy rockin', depressed, miserable loser guy, and the Lord picked him up, dusted him off, and said, I got work for you to do. And he is so incredibly talented. I listened to that music all day long, I don't listen to any other music other than scripture music. That is pretty much the only music I listen to. I do not listen to Christian radio. I don't listen to songs made by people to glorify God when I could just be listening to God's word itself and have that running around my head. So when I rattle off scripture, like I'm just like, you know, when you hear me sounding like I know just all the scripture, it's because I listen to all the songs. That's the only reason. And this particular one, he has not yet made a song about, so I didn't know it. And when I was quoting it yesterday, I kind of got it a little off. So it is Psalm 84:10. And I brought this up yesterday in relation to the experience of being the child of a wealthy, famous celebrity versus being the child of a normal, middle class, or even maybe poor person who loves the Lord and is a Christian. I would far rather take the latter than the former, because those children of self-obsessed, godless celebrities who make their livings doing immoral things oftentimes wind up in jail, wind up on drugs, wind up committing suicide, wind up with the worst possible, most miserable, awful lives you can imagine. And so all the money in the world, all the fame in the world, having cars and mansions and trips and yachts and who knows what, didn't really account for anything when it came down to the bottom line. And so here's the quote that I was trying to tell you yesterday. It's Psalm 84:10, and I'm going to read it from ESV. All right, for a day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness. Now, you're probably thinking, dwell in a tent. I don't want to live in a tent. All right. Well, back then, the tents were the opulent places. The tents were what were all set up with the, like feed me a grape kind of a situation with the Persian rugs and all the gorgeousness. That was the tents. So it doesn't mean, like a Boy Scout tent of misery and sleeping on the floor. It's talking about a beautiful tent. But I love this because I would rather be a doorkeeper. I would rather, now there's another one. One day in your temple is better than 1,000 anywhere else. I would rather serve in your house than live in the homes of the wicked. All right, there's a more modern translation. So yeah, I would much rather be a servant in the house of the Lord, which is what I am, because I'm signing up. I've signed up. I'm like right here, ready to serve, than to have be fed grapes by wicked people in a horrible environment, because it just doesn't end well. All right, now that I've gotten you up to date with that, I gotta tell you, this is from 970 area code. I love this text that I just got. It says, now you have the Titanic song stuck in my head. My heart will live on. Yes, indeed, my heart will live on. So if you're an organ donor, I suppose if you want your heart to live on in a ghoulish fashion in the body of someone else with their mind, then by all means, be an organ donor, because maybe your heart will get a chance to not perish with the rest of your body. But I have to say, for the most of us, no, I don't want my heart to live on someone else's body. So thank you for that. Super cute. All right, let me get back to where I was just reading. All right, so we've got amazing technology, don't we? We are, and I'm writing a book on the Garden of Eden and the fruit that Adam and Eve ate in order to have the knowledge of good and evil, which the serpent, the devil, promised would give them the powers of God. And they ate that fruit. That fruit, I believe, was the knowledge to create technology, which has given us the powers of God. We can put a pig heart in a person. We can take an electronic titanium heart and put it in a person. We can't keep them alive very long, but we can do it. So we've got, this is something inconceivable to previous generations, that you would be able to actually take a beating heart out of a person and put it into another person and keep them alive. It's just like ghoulish and something they never thought would happen. All right. So now I'm going to share with you another story. Pig transplant, that is not the one I want. Personality changes, no. Where is it? Hang on a minute. I knew I had it. Here we go. All right. Here, I'll bring it up for those of you on YouTube. I love being able to do this. All right. Doomsday believers no longer fringe. Study suggests that 1/3 of Americans believe we're living in the end times. And when I say living in the end times, I'm not talking about sometime in the next 1,000 years it's all going to come to an end. I'm talking about in their lifetime. A third of people living in America right now believe that the world will end in their lifetime. The technologies that we have that have just put us at such incredible risk, and specifically AI, I think pretty much everybody knows that AI is going to kill us. I think we all know that. We're just unable to stop ourselves from being killed by it, or stop using it. All right, let me read it. From climate change to the rise of AI to the rapture, more adults think we're currently living in end times. 1 in 3 Americans in the study, between 29 and 39%, depending on the question, believed the world would end within their own lifetime. Wow. Now, I got to say, I'm getting older, and I know I don't look it, but I'm I'm getting older. I'm probably not going to be around more than, I don't know, a couple decades longer. The third of people who believe it'll end in their lifetime, I would probably imagine, are like people who are in their teens and 20s, maybe, because they're going to be around for, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. But a third of Americans believe it's going to end in their lifetime. Do I think it's going to end in my lifetime? I have to say, for the first time in my entire life, I think the answer is not, of course not. For the first time in my entire life, I think the answer is probably not, but maybe. Ooh, like, where would I fall on this 1 in 3 Americans? That figure aligns with broader national polling. These beliefs turned out to be stronger predictors of risk behavior than political affiliation or income. And that's the downside to this, is if you believe the world is going to end, then you are likely to engage in risky behavior. I remember when Y2K was coming up and I was in my 20s. I was actually in my 30s when Y2K happened. But when I was in my 20s, I remember thinking, I'm probably not even going to live through that. I may as well Like, should I even go to college? Should I even bother? Should I even, because the world's just going to end in the year 2000. And of course it didn't end, but I remember that mindset. And so if you believe that the world's going to end, you may be inclined to do really stupid stuff like spend all your money or not get educated or just do bad things because you don't think you're going to be around forever. Well, none of us are going to be around forever on this earth, but you don't believe you're going to be around long enough to really even enjoy it. Let me tell you right now, erase that mindset from your head. Erase it. It was very injurious to me for the period of time that I held that mindset in the 90s. It was not a good mindset. It wasn't good. Don't do it. Do not believe, do not think, because previous generations have thought this as well. People have thought this as long as there has been an understanding of the end times. People have always thought, no, it's this generation, it's this. Even in the year 1000, when the clock or the calendar was turning over from 999 to 1000, people were fully expecting that the Lord would return and take them then. We don't know. We do not know. This AI thing is getting dark. We know it's getting dark. We know that God's pouring out his spirit in miraculous and profound, incredible ways, in a way that he has not done during the dark periods of time when he allowed Satan to essentially usurp the belief system of Americans and modern technological society. But he's back. He's back, and he's bringing religion back. So that's a good sign. You don't know, though, how long we have. So do not fall into this trap of believing that it's going to be in our lifetime. So I do believe that we're living in the end times, but I believe that all humanity has lived in the end times. This whole human endeavor is like the Titanic. I love that. My heart will go on, but it's like the Titanic. We struck an iceberg back in the Garden of Eden 10,000 years ago. I don't know how long ago that was. We struck an iceberg way back then. And it has been the end times ever since. It really has. The end times meaning the time when Satan is the ruler of this world and things are really dark and horrible. This has always been the case. It's always been the case. The good news is that 2,000 years ago, God sent his son to earth in order to provide us with a way to live here and now with the Holy Spirit in goodness and in safety, and to join the rescue crew instead of the victims. All right. So anyway, this article's here. I'm going to post it. I'll put it up. I want you to actually look at it. It's kind of interesting to see what our fellow Americans believe. But I'm here to tell all Americans and people across the globe, there's one answer, and the answer is God. And it doesn't matter whether it's tomorrow or in 1,000 years. We're all going to die. We're all all going to have to face that great white throne judgment at some point. And we'll be okay. It's gonna all be okay. In fact, it's gonna be better than okay. It's gonna be really good. All right, I'm Katherine Albrecht. I will be back tomorrow. I will post these links in katherine-albrecht.com in the chat room. And meanwhile, thanks so much for listening. God bless you all.